Hey everyone, on today's episode, this is a Households of FI conversation, and I got the opportunity to sit down with Corinne today and go over her FI numbers. Now, this episode builds directly on the last episode that featured Corinne. That was episode 243, where she sat down with Jillian Johnsrud and did a bunch of goal setting. We're going to break this episode up into two parts. In the first part, we're going to address from the action items that she took a look at with Jillian. What has she taken action on? What have been the results from that? Because there has been a good amount of space since that episode was recorded. And then now, with regard to her actual numbers, how can we, now that we know what her goals are, how can we map that out to her current income, her current expenses, her current net worth, and put all this together and to see where we are and how that information affects our actual FI plan. In my mind, it is the core of what a basic plan to financial independence should look like. And the conversation is going to be just as much fun to listen to as it was for me to get the opportunity to put together with Corinne. I will also say that for those of you that like visuals, we did capture a lot of this, including the tax planning and the calculations. We did capture it via video as well, and you will be able to find the video embedded on the page of this episode. Just go to ChooseFI.com/304. Or you can find this episode and all of our episodes to this point on our YouTube channel, which you can find at ChooseFI.tv. All right, with that, welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is ChooseFI.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, everyone, I'm really excited to get a chance to hop in on one of our Households of FI coaching series. I'm going to be working with Corinne today. We're going to be taking a look at her budget. This is not her first coaching call. In fact, in episode 243, she had this incredible chat with Jillian Johnsrud, the host of Everyday Courage, and it was taking a look at what are your goals. And I think it's the right order. The math, I'm going to be honest with you, if you understand the tenets, it's kind of easy. I'm not saying that this isn't a very important conversation. In fact, it's probably where most people that find this show, it's where they start. But pretty quickly after you get into it, you realize that while the math is simple, the math is going to change depending on your goals. And so it's really important to start with, well, what do you want? What does your ideal day look like? Ultimately, this is not, financial independence is not about having the most money. It's about building a better life, having more options. And Corinne in that episode stated that explicitly. The goal for her is not to go sit on a beach drinking pina coladas and never have to think about work or money again. Rather, it is community. It is options. It's being able to design her future. And in that episode, Jillian and Corinne were able to workshop a few of those pain points. And those pain points in current COVID era times where her work structure as an accountant at a firm on the track to partner have not been derailed, but things have shifted underneath her. And on the track that she's in line for a partnership at some point. What does she want? Does a partnership mean that she's going to be working 90 hours a week for crazy amounts of money, but have no time? Is there a balance that can be pursued? How will that affect her path to financial independence? And while she's working towards financial independence, is her budget where it needs to be? It's a very individual question. There's no one perfect budget. There's no one perfect life, but there is probably a perfect path for an individual. So they were able to kind of troubleshoot, well, what do you want? We're going to be building on that conversation now, and I'm very excited to get a chance to explore this. So Corinne, with that, welcome back to the ChooseFI podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So first of all, one of my favorite things is just a little bit of accountability. So when you and Jillian talked, y'all worked through, hey, I just said y'all. I don't know where that came from. I know you're living in Gainesville, and that's what happened. That's what they just came back. Felt natural. We're sharing a moment here. All right. So when you and Jillian talked, I know that you were given a couple tasks, not only to prepare for that episode, things that you were able to bring to the conversation, but also based on the conversation, you went and had a few things that you were going to be working on, but in your personal life. And I'm curious, just for our audience to catch them up, when you came away from that call, what were the 2 or 3 big things that you said, I need to focus on this? And have you taken action on those ideas?
Yeah, so I got a lot out of the conversation with Jillian. And I think probably the biggest thing for me that she kind of helped me with and talking about was talking about how to build good habits and specific strategies that I can use to really get closer to the goals that I want. So, an example she used is even for something as simple as meditation. That sounds really easy. She said, if you're struggling to do that, set a timer on your phone. And, when that timer goes off, you meditate for a minute, and then maybe that minute becomes 2 minutes and different things like that. So, one of the things that I've taken away from talking to her is I have a ton of reminders on my phone now for like everything that I have goals for. So, whether it's calling my mom or whether it's updating my budget or whether it's doing a meditation or reading a book, I have those reminders that pop up, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. So I think that's been really good for me because it kind of forces me to hold myself accountable and it doesn't require me to just remember everything I want because when you have a hectic schedule, something is going to get lost in the shuffle. So that's been really helpful for me.
There's this idea, and it's true, that we're all creatures of habit. A better way of framing it is Dominic Cortuccio, when he's talking about Design Your Future, basically says, we live most of our lives in this drift state. And like only 1% of our day, 1% of our life, 1% of our actions are intentional. The rest of it is just our subconscious kind of taking over. And we go through the same routines, these same habits over time. The challenge that Jillian gave you, just give it 2 minutes. Can you do 2 minutes? Is really powerful because it allows us to activate, just give ourselves a chance to activate that 1%. But what I thought she did that really was an important observation that I've missed in the past is if your 1% self says, just do it for 2 minutes, but then you resist that, she said, explore that. Like, be a little bit curious. Why is that resistance there? Spend a little bit of time there. And I tell you, as I was listening to y'all's coaching episode, I had made this goal to go for a run, to go work out, and I wasn't. And I literally, while I'm listening to the episode, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do 2 minutes. And that ended up turning into 30 or 40. But I thought of all the times I say these things are important to me and I say I want to do them in a vacuum. I'm this place. Yes, my goal is to get up every day at 5 a.m. and it's to go do this and it's go do this and it's do that. And then you just don't. But like, you don't explore that. You just say, not today. Like, what if you gave yourself two opt-out, two easy things. One, I only have to do 2 minutes. And in fact, building on James Clear's Atomic Habits book, there's something really powerful to that. What if you said you're not allowed to do 3? You're not allowed to do 4. I don't care how much you want to. Right now, you're just proving that you will go to that 1% place. You'll do 2 minutes. And then if you're like, I'm not even willing to do that, well, let's spend 5 minutes exploring that. What is it about your subconscious that is sabotaging your long-term goals over and over and over again? And not about your exercise habits or your meditation habits, but maybe this is about your purchasing habits. Maybe this is about something where you just always say yes when every aspect of you wants to say no because you know it's not in your best interest, but you keep doing it. Let's explore that a little bit further. One other thing that it sounded like you guys spent a fair amount talking about was like you're crushing it in your job. You are a high performer. Your agency, you're an accountant and you're on track for partner. You're in that lane. But there's some conflict there about what is the life that you want to build because there's some expectations that come with partnership and there's a way things have always been done. And there's not necessarily 100% alignment between what you want and maybe what those expectations are. And so I believe you guys spent a little bit of time workshopping. What would it look like? Have you spent any more time there? And do you see a lane for you to be able to end up in a situation where you can have both? You can have your dream job, like you're going to get a job that you would never want to retire from. Is there a path?
Yeah, so I did work on that. And one of the exercises that she had gave me for homework before our call was kind of doing that, writing down your ideal path and what would your ideal day look like and everything like that. And so I have been really conscious over the past month or two to pay attention at work to the things that energize me and the things that drain my energy and kind of just noting those and writing them down. And I think I've been doing a pretty good job of trying to manufacture my day to look like, the best kind of day, the days that make me want to get up and go to work and do my job. I think, that's never going to be 100% of the time, right? I mean, there's always going to be days where you just don't want to do it, but I have seen a difference in terms of kind of being able to be more focused on the things that I really enjoy and kind of learning how to delegate some of the things that I don't get as much fulfillment out of. And I've also had some conversations with some of my mentors and advisors at the office, and I have gotten a lot of support in terms of people telling me, you don't have to work, 2,500 hours a year or whatever it is. It's kind of just a decision. If you want to be the highest earning partner, then yeah, you're going to have to work a ton of hours.
But there's a difference between the highest earning partner and partner.
Sure.
Where they're not saying if you want to be a partner, you have to work. They're just saying if
Right.
you want to be the highest paid partner, this is what it's going to look like.
Right. And there is a minimum expectation, but that's not really an issue. I think it's just more we all kind of put the pressure on ourselves to work so much because we see everyone else doing it. But at the end of the day, it's reminding yourself that it is a choice and everything in life is a choice. And you can choose, what kind of balance you want to have in your life. And if working less hours means making a little less money, but being happier in the grand scheme of things, I think that's something that is doable. And, I'm very fortunate to have a career where, I do make good money and I have high earning potential. So it does give me a little more wiggle room to be able to kind of decide, how hard do I want to push it? And that can change, maybe in a certain season of my life, I'm gung ho right now and I'm just going to work my butt off. And then, maybe there comes a time where it's like, I need to dial it back a little bit. So having that leeway to be able to do that is really, really nice.
Awesome. One thing I was listening to the episode with you guys that struck me is this kind of prioritizing your priorities and also this idea of making time. I'm kind of using our conversation and Jillian's with you as kind of a springboard for audience members. There's something about your story, your pain point that resonated with them, something they're going through right now. And I just would like to, when possible, point back to other episodes where we've really done deep dives on some of these. And one of them, episode 168 of our podcast. So with any of these numbers that I'm giving, you can just go to ChooseFI.com/3-digit number. So in this case, 168. We had the opportunity to interview John Zaratsky, the author of Make Time. And if for those of us that have kind of felt like the week is a blur, the month is a blur, we just don't remember what happened and nothing that we did lit us up. The idea behind Make Time is that we can start to craft, we can take a look at what actually lights us up, and we can build these highlights throughout our week that actually make each week more memorable, more enjoyable. And as a result of doing this, we can start to spend less time on the meaningless. Like if you're spending throughout your day, you're checking your email 20 or 30 times a day. Think about the cost, the mental switching cost of doing that as opposed to, let me just batch this. I check my email in between 10:30 and 11, and I check my email between 3:30 and 4, or pick a longer window if you have a massive email responsibility. You batch these specific tasks. And you look at these things like infinite scrolls, like on your phone where you can do Twitter forever, Facebook for Twitter. You swipe to the left and you've got Google News updates forever. Like you might think you're being productive, but all you've done is gone through the first 3 pages of your Google updates. You're updating for what? What could possibly be on Google updates that you actually need to know? And you're sacrificing your happiness in the meantime. So it's kind of little things like that. Like what would it look like for us to reclaim our time in the process and realize we actually do have more bandwidth than we think and re-energize ourselves while we're on the path to FI? Now, you've actually transitioned us perfectly here. We're going to talk about the finances a little bit because that's something that this is the point that you're at right now. You're open to the idea of financial independence. You're making a lot of the right moves, but you'd like somebody just to kind of take a look over your shoulder and say, where am I maybe more objectively? Like I feel like I'm doing good. Where am I objectively and where could I make some improvement? So let's start with just this very simple equation. You got what you earn minus what you spend is equal to this difference. And I know you can't see my handwritten notes, but I'll have it on the screen for you for later. What you earn minus what you spend is equal to this difference, or we'd like a gap. So if you're paycheck to paycheck, unfortunately, that means there's no gap. That's a problem. But you do have a gap. So let's talk a little bit about that. You're an accountant, and how many years of experience do you have?
I have almost 10 years.
You're 10 years in. What's your income?
Right now, it's $120,000.
That's amazing. And is that pretty typical for an accountant in your particular? What is your specialty? Your personal accountant, corporate? What do you do?
So I'm a little bit unique. I work with nonprofit organizations and I work in different segment lines. So most people will pick either, audit and assurance or tax or what have you. But I do both. And I also do outsourced accounting and controllership services. So it is a little bit of a unique model, but our firm is a, fairly typical local CPA firm. So I think, for our region, at least, I think that's probably pretty typical of someone in a senior management position.
I think sharing this sort of information is really important for people that are thinking about career tracks. Let's talk about the career track that got you to a 6-figure income. So this was a 4-year degree. It's a bachelor's degree. Is that accurate?
Yes. And then I did a 5-year program where I got my bachelor's and my master's, because to take your CPA exam, you have to have a certain amount of course requirements anyways. So that was just kind of the easy way for me to go.
Did you graduate with student loan debt?
No, I did not.
Oh, wow. And so was that the Bright Scholarship or
Yeah, I
something
had
along?
the 100% Bright Future Scholarship, and then my parents paid for my housing, luckily, and then I did some, student assistant work and TA work and stuff like that just to cover living expenses.
Very cool. So Florida resident here. There's some more stuff there. We'll get to that when we start talking about state taxes in a little bit. But the Bright Scholarship, and I think it's Florida and Georgia has another variation, maybe a couple other states. But just for audience that are hearing this for the first time, is it common knowledge in Florida that this is a thing?
Yes, it is, and it's changed since I was in college, so I'm not quite familiar with what the current structure of it is. But yeah, it's a pretty well-known scholarship program.
Very cool. Okay, so you graduate, your 5-year program, and what do you think if you were graduating right now from this 5-year program? What would someone going into your industry make out the gate in a similar track or lane?
That's a good question. I'm guessing it's probably going to be somewhere in the 50,000
Yep.
area, if I had to guess.
Yep. So you're starting out around 50K, and would you identify this as just making 6 to 8% raises year over year? Was there anything that got you to 120? Because you've done really well. You've doubled your income, more than doubled your income over this 10-year stint, which is
Mhm.
incredible. You're a high performer. That's coming through. And was this all with one company? Like, how did we go from 50 to 120? What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so it actually has been all with one company, and I did some internships there where I was in college, so that kind of got me a good relationship with the people there and had a job offer coming out of college, which was great for me. At the time, the job market was a little difficult, so that was nice. And I think for me, what has gotten me to where I am is definitely work ethic is part of it, but also just being willing to be a little conventional and outside of the box and kind of figure out where I can excel. For me, I'm not maybe the technically strongest person in the world. I'm not that person who could study the night before the test and get an A.
Neither am
But
I.
I think what
I don't know if I
what
could
I'm
study 3 nights in a row and get an A.
yeah,
It's a lot of
no,
stress, a lot of work to get A's on my part.
yeah, me too, for sure. And so I think that's what I realized pretty quickly about myself is that I was going to have to narrow my focus if I wanted to excel. And so that's where kind of going to my mentors and advisors again and kind of saying, "Hey, I'm really enjoying working with these nonprofit clients. Can I specialize in this industry so that I really only have to learn one industry, understand those rules really well, and just be an expert at it?" So that has really helped me. It's kind of made me again like I'm viewed as an expert in that
Yeah.
space. So that's made me valuable in that regard and has really helped me in my career trajectory.
That's fantastic. All right. So I wanted to talk both to you and to other individuals because you mentioned a little bit about this, about getting feedback from your mentors. And I wanted to point out just the fact that you have mentors. You've identified people that are a little bit farther ahead, maybe at pace, or a little bit farther ahead, and they are giving you this feedback like, hey, you might want to go over here. There's going to be an opportunity. You might want to steer your, I can see the threats if you do this. This is something that like you've kind of figured out the earn more piece. You have more than doubled your income over a 10-year period while staying at the same company. Many people are getting less than 3% cost of living adjustments by making that choice to stay at the same company. Would you attribute most of that to becoming an expert in a niche? And then would you attribute that to mentors guiding you towards the sweet spots? Like kind of help me navigate that a little bit.
I think that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think in our industry, in the public accounting industry, there are very clearly defined roles. So when you get promoted into a role, there is a salary range for that role. So I think your ability to increase your income is dependent on your ability and desire to want to progress and to take on more responsibility. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a certain area, but you have to be good enough and hardworking enough to be able to move up that ladder. There is a situation where if you decide, you know what, I don't want to progress any further, then you'll probably start just getting those cost of living raises more or less at that point. But as you continue to move up that ladder, then there's going to be bigger jumps in there. So I think that's probably the biggest part of it. And then beyond that, it just kind of becomes, kind of what I was talking to Jillian about is however many hours you're willing to work is how much money you're going to make. So then it becomes more of a decision of, okay, how much time do I want to put into it? Where's the marginal utility of that next
Right.
hour or that next dollar, and kind of trying to figure that out.
All right, now let's talk about the partner track a little bit because that was part of one of your aspirational goals. When you started as an accountant, did you even realize that like partner track was a thing? Was that on your radar?
I knew it was a thing because they were my boss, but I didn't really understand how it all worked. I didn't really say, oh, I want to make partner in 10 years or whatever it is. Some people are very gung ho and they know exactly what they want. I had always kind of taken my career in 2 to 3 year blocks and said, if I'm still liking it after 2 years, I'm going to stick around and kind of have just kept re-upping on that because I've I have really enjoyed it. I'm fortunate to work at a great firm with really great people, which makes a huge difference. But I think the nice thing is there are a lot of different options. So if I didn't want to be a partner, it's not an up or out mentality. So I did kind of consider that. I said, okay, do I really want to go to the partner track, or do I want to go the other route, which they call a director route, which you kind of level off and become more of a technical expert, and you still assist clients and everything. But I think what really intrigues me about the partner role is having an ownership in the business, and really, I've always wanted to be a business owner, and I think that's such a cool goal, and just having that ability to kind of influence, the way the company is run, and taking care of the people and the clients and everything. That's kind of my biggest motivation in that regard. And obviously the financial incentive is nice too. There's definitely a much higher earning potential once you get into that ownership role.
Well, let's talk just a little bit about that. So, as an accountant, the monetization for the most part, as an individual, you are billing some particular hourly rate, and a portion of that has to cover overhead for the company, has to cover maybe partner fees, et cetera. But then a portion of that is yours. I would imagine as a partner, maybe you get a higher percentage of your billable hours plus maybe some overall percentage of the profitability of the company. Is that close?
More or less. Yeah. I mean, there's a very complicated formula that, I'll be completely honest, I don't entirely understand. But it basically is, the more revenue that the company has, then the more that's going to be left over to split between the partners based on their respective books of business. So it's more or less a function of that's driven by the revenue of the company, and then the expenses of the company, and what's left over. The pot kind of gets divided based on how each partner has their business broken out.
So that ownership stake that you get, that percentage of profitability, is that only coming to you while you are an active partner in the company? Let's say you're 60, 70 years old, you're retiring, you're done, you're stepping away. Do you sell your shares? What's the exit strategy for a partner? Or is it just, all right, this is yours for life?
They do have payouts after retirement. And again, that's something that, I'll be completely honest, I haven't totally understood the formula for yet, but it is something where it's not really like a buy-in, buyout, like a traditional partnership. It's structured a little differently. So you do get some retirement payouts after you retire.
Cool. Now you can see why, as part of a FI plan, it might be interesting for us to know, like, all right, if I follow the traditional track and I'm in this role for the next 20 years, I'm 10 in now, and I have a 30-year career with this company. At the end of 30 years, when I'm done, because I've met the certain criteria, there is the equivalent of a pension that comes to me as, this partner role. Like, that's going to change our financial independence number. So it might be just on your checklist. You don't need to be a world master at understanding how this formula is calculating, but as it becomes increasingly a reality that this is the trajectory you're on, you would probably want to know, like, how is this going to, if I can rely on this income, how is this going to affect what I need to actually save for retirement? So that's why we're exploring that a little bit. And it doesn't sound like you have that and you don't need to, but it certainly will affect your retirement number. So you'll want to start thinking about that. Okay. So we covered your income. So we have 120K and gross, and we'll start working through your expenses, but how much of that compensation goes towards like health insurance, that sort of thing? Or is that on top of the 120?
So yeah, that's the 120 is my salary. In terms of benefits, we get an allotment for insurance. So I don't remember the exact amount they gave me, but it's basically like you get, let's say, $400 a month worth of stuff, and you go in your little basket and pick whatever you want. So the majority of mine is covered. I have health insurance for a single person. I have dental insurance, vision insurance, and teledoc. And I think I'm paying maybe like, $20 a month or something out of my pocket.
Great. So the 120 is after benefits. You have about 120 is your gross. All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Andrew from the ChooseFI team. Hope you're enjoying the interview. We're going to get right back to it right after these quick messages.
Let's move on here. Basically, we want to know is we know your gross salary. It'd be nice to kind of whittle down to a net. I'm sure you could provide that for me, but as a useful exercise for our audience, I would suggest that we go to a website that I'm a huge fan of, and maybe you're familiar with it, smartasset.com. Have you ever gone to that website before?
No, I have not.
All right. This one is a lot of fun. I can do a screen share on just for a second here, just so you can see it. Give me a second, and we'll run this together. This is one of my favorite income tax calculators because most of them just work at the federal level. This one will actually incorporate your state and local taxes in there as well. So what we're going to throw in there is your gross salary. And this doesn't have, we're not looking for 100% precision. We're just trying to see if we're getting it close. So we're going to say it's a household income of 120, and then we need to do your location. And so what city are you in?
I'm in Gainesville, Florida.
All right. So Gainesville, Florida. So let's take a look at your location. We have 120,000 of household income. We have Gainesville, Florida. Florida has a very favorable tax rate. I mean, you can highlight that. What is Florida state tax, Corinne?
It's a lovely 0%.
Gosh, those in California are like spitting out right now. Anyways, we'll come back to that. But wait, there's more. So first of all, let's talk about this. So on $120,000 filing single, your federal income tax plus FICA, so Social Security, your tax would be $30,000, $29,227. That would be your federal tax burden. But I know from a fact from listening to the episode with Jillian that you already max out your 401k, right? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Very good. So let's take that off the top. So we're going to take the 120,000, and then I think the max limits in 2020, what was that, 19.5 this year, Corinne?
Yes.
So 120,000 minus 19,500 means that your actual federal tax, your taxable income would be $100,500. Wow, that just rolls right off the tongue. So let's now take a look at that. $100,500. Filing single in Florida. So now your federal income tax plus FICA is $23,000. So that one decision to max out your 401k, you're just saying, hey, I'd like to save this money for later, saved you over $6,000 in income tax. That money would have just been gone to the federal government to pay taxes, but you're saying, you know what, I'd like to save this for my retirement. And the government is effectively giving, saying, yeah, great. You control your tax rate. That's fantastic. Now, I want to add on to that, though. There's more. Again, her tax bracket looks very simple in Florida. There's a 0% state tax bracket there. In other states, like Virginia, I think it's like 5 all the way up to 8%. California, it goes even higher than that. Like Florida has some significant tax benefits. So we just put a 0 line item. So we're saying, your federal tax plus your FICA, you're going to be taxed. You're going to have $23,000 in tax. Your income after all of your taxes with no state and no local taxes is going to be, and after maxing out your 401k, you're bringing home $77,445. For simplicity, for this example, what we'll use going forward is that you have $77,500 net pay. Does that sound close to accurate?
I think so, yeah.
All right. It's enough for us to work on. There's plenty of rounding errors here, but it's enough for us to use. And let's just assume, for the sake of simplicity, that you get paid monthly. You probably don't, but let's just assume that you did. And
I do, actually.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, they're so considerate. Okay, so $77,500 divided by 12. You have about $6,500 a month to work with. Does that sound close?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. $6,500 a month is what you're starting with. And you've already, clarify for audience, you have already maxed out your 401k. So we'll come back to that in a second, but it's important when we talk about our FI numbers, not to forget we're already making massive progress. So now that we know this is really where we're starting from, $6,500 is what we have each month to budget. We got to figure out how much does their life actually cost. So let's go through the big ones. For many people, for entrepreneurs, for me, I have to take a look at health insurance. Got to put that on there. But for you, it's basically a decimal rounding error, which we don't even need to include it. It's so negligible. And the next big one, though, for many people would be, and we already covered taxes, that's taken care of. So now we probably need to look at your living situation, rent or mortgage. How much does your rent or mortgage cost per month on average?
So I'm in the process of refinancing right now, but my mortgage payment is approximately $1,000.
All right. So well below 25% of your take-home pay. 25%, which if you're starting to approach 50% of your take-home pay, you're going to start feeling a little tight, a little squeezed. You're well below 25% of 6,500 would be about would be about 1,800, somewhere in that range, 16 to 1,800, somewhere in there. So you're down there near 1,000. So you've already got a lot of space. And then how much for your groceries and your food bill?
It varies significantly, but I would say, and
don't keep it tight. Like, give yourself lots of rounding error here. We're not trying to,
okay.
I'm not trying to force you in a box. I'm just saying, if you were going to err on the side of giving yourself too much each month, you know, but it's kind of keeping it closely accurate. You're like, well, it's 90% of the time it's below this. What is that number?
Yeah, it's usually less than 500, maybe 550.
Okay. So we've got mortgage, we've got food. What about transportation? Do you have any car payments?
I don't have any car payments. So it's really just gas, which has been low lately because I'm working from home right now.
All right. So let's say it's $100 a month on gas. Maybe that's probably way too high, but you know, we also have maybe state inspections, car mechanic problems, like all of which goes down. There's probably some extra stuff around the car, but it wouldn't go over $100 a month, right? car
Right.
taxes. Does Florida have car tax laws that you pay?
Yeah, we have to pay a tag fee.
Would that be covered easily by $100 a month?
Yeah, it's like $60 a year. It's low.
So I'm giving you too much here. But if at some point you have some sort of sliding expense, you have $1,200 a year that's kind of in this general car maintenance, repair, gas fund. It's too much, but we won't, it'll be fine. Mortgage, food, car, gas, utilities. So what comes to mind is, do you have property taxes on your mortgage that weren't included by, the refinance deal, or were your property taxes included in that $1,000 a month?
Yeah. So when I give you that payment, that's what I actually pay. So it includes the escrow amounts in there.
Fantastic. And then we have our basic utilities that we need to run through. So we've got our cell phone, we've got our internet, we have our cable package, or hey, we cut the cable, but we added 9 entertainment on demand options, which in aggregate add up to far more than our cable. What are those? Do you group those together as kind of my living life on the internet expenses?
Mm-hmm. So right now what I've been doing is kind of just downloading my credit card activity and going with kind of where they group things. So I do have a bills and utilities section, and that is around $375, $400.
Okay, perfect. And then dining out, entertainment, stuff I forgot to budget for, like over the last couple months. Like right now, we've only added up right around, we're still under $2,000 a month. Is there do you think everything else could be bundled under $500 a month for the stuff that I missed? Did I miss anything big that we should be adding into this?
Yeah, so for me, the dining out and shopping together is looking like it's probably going to be around 500. But then I also do have charity, like I budget in my charity, and that varies between around 200 a month, let's say.
Yep.
And what else do I have on here? Oh, I didn't include my HOA in there, so that's going to be $150 a month.
Okay. All right. And is there anything else? I'm just thinking through my personal life. What about, do you have your home, or do you rent? Are you fixing up your home? Do you find yourself throwing a lot of money at home maintenance, home renovations, all these sorts of things, home decor, like your weekly Target run? Like, is there like a cadence to these extra Amazon Prime expenses that we should just incorporate under stuff I forgot to budget for?
Sort of. I mean, I do have the shopping budget, so all my Amazon and Target goes in there. I do do housekeeping, which is $100 a month. That's kind of my one home expense that doesn't really fall into any other category, I would say.
Housekeeping, $100 a month. What about travel? Do you and vacations? And also, is there a line item here? I know travel right now, that's a joke, but generally.
Yeah.
Generally,
normally there would be, but it's been pretty much nothing.
But we don't want to account for this one isolated pandemic that seems to go on forever. We want to account for our life, because this is a general strategy. So, that's why I said with the car, yeah, but at some point, are you going to drive again? Or have you decided to bike to work forever or renegotiate? So let's get you a budget that doesn't just work during COVID, but like you stay under and you feel like it's realistic when life goes back to pseudo normal. And so with your car, we'll keep that at $100 a month, just so we have some wiggle room here. And with travel, I mean, let's look at last year, the year before. Did you try to take 2 one-week trips a year? Are you aspiring to do more international travel as you have more time? Like, is there some amount that you would like to set aside? Because at some point you're going to, where you'd be nice to know, well, I'm not going to start saving on day zero when the trip's 10 days from now. I'm going to this is the money that I kind of have earmarked for this. Do you have any dollar amount there that come to mind?
So what I had hoped for when I was doing a rough budget, I put about 3,000 in there. I do want to start doing more traveling.
3,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I'm just going to break that down, because again, monthly, right? Just for our monthly purposes. So 3,000 divided by 12, we're at $250 a month that we'd like to set aside for some travel each month. That's great. If you get to 3,000, have no time to use it, maybe you stop budgeting for that going forward. Anything else? Like what we're trying to do here is not like present this perfect image of this perfect FI life that doesn't have any random expenses. It's if everything's dialed in, then this is, I can spend $700 a month and I got it nailed. No, we want to know, what does your life actually look like? Because we're going to try to prevent ourselves from having to look at every single penny. We're going to try to create an anti-budget. We're going to try to create something that we just don't need to look at. Super difficult. As long as we know we stay under these amounts, we're good. We're on the path. Have we missed anything? We went from the core, and now we've added in dining and shopping and Amazon and Target and charity and our HOA and our housekeeping, and we want to travel and we want to take vacations. And I feel pretty good about these numbers. I don't see any gaping holes, but Do you want to add anything to this?
I don't think anything specific. The only thing I can think of just looking at my activity is I do have like random Venmo activity. So it might not be a bad idea to just put in like kind of a random $100 a month or something just for whatever you want to call it, odds and ends, unbudgeted items, kind of like you said.
Let's call it 200 a month because there's probably something else that we missed. So, all right.
Sure.
And you've got some room. I just want to point out you've got some room here. Let me do the math on what we just said. So I'm just putting this on my cell phone. I just try to keep this super low tech and simple. We have $1,000 for our mortgage. We have $500 for food. We've got $100 for this car and gas. It's a giant paperweight right now. We've got our utilities through our building that are $375. That adds up our internet, our cell phone, maybe our cable or whatever. We've got dining out and shopping that we're capping at below $500 a month. We've got $200 that we carve out for charity each month. We've got an HOA fee at $150 a month. We've got housekeeping at $100 a month. We've got travel one day at $250 a month. And we got stuff I forgot to budget for at $200 a month, bringing our total cost of living to, wait for it, drum roll, $3,375. That's a very comfortable number for you to maintain your current life without any deprivation, any sacrifices. That's not budgeting. That's just saying my observation over my last 3 months is my life cost around, on average, $33.75 a month. It probably doesn't cost that, but when I budget that amount aside, I say, pay myself, make sure this is landing there. Then down the road, when something's more expensive, the money is there to actually handle that. So do you think we did this in a fair way up to this point? Are we on the same page?
I think we're pretty close. It looks like my net expenses that I'm showing for the past several months hover around that area. I mean, there's a pretty wide variety from month to month, but that seems like actually a really reasonable average.
Perfect. And that's all we want. We want an average. Life is lumpy. Life will never follow your exact prescripted rules. We're just trying to, at this point, this is an observation stage. Look, there's sometimes when your hair is on fire, debt is eating away at you. You've got to reel everything and you've just scrapped every penny. You cannot afford to stay at paycheck to paycheck. We've got to get some space. And recognizing that is really important because you would hear me say, do we really need to spend that at this time? But the goal is not for you to be that worried about every single penny for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that's not your situation. You actually have right now, observe, if I were to double what you're spending, you're still right now, after you max out your 401k, you have $6,500 left over. If you double your expenses, you're just barely crossing that. So you're already at a 50% savings rate, not even including what you're maxing out with your 401k. Let's observe the actual gap. So we're going to take $6,500, which is what we calculated is your net pay right now, $6,500, and we're going to subtract this, super rough number that we just came up with and say $33.75. That leaves us with a difference of $3,125 a month. And this is where, in my mind, it gets fun. This is where I really like the idea of if these numbers are reliable, if they've been tested over time, and if we have just a little bit of money set aside already, I would just make one simple decision that I'm just going to put this money to work for me. I'm not going to wait to spend it or see what's left at the end of the month. I'm going to try to take a YNAB model where I'm living on last month's paycheck. So the money I made last month is the money that I'm living off this month. Does that make sense? All my money is at least 30 days old. And then as soon as that next $6,500 check hits my bank account, the first thing I do is I send $3,125 to my investment strategy, whatever that is. We can talk about that in just a second. And then from there, I know the rest of it's covered. I've got 1 month of expenses. I probably have some small emergency set aside for unexpected larger expenses, but I'm only making one big decision, and that is just to get that $3,125 toward my goals as quickly as possible, and then we'll worry about it next time. And that's how you can get your life down from spending hours and hours worrying about it to just, this is what we do. I know these numbers work. I give myself permission to reevaluate every 6 months. If I need to scale it up, dress it down. If I make more, I get a raise, all these other things. But budgeting could be that simple once you're out of the hair is on fire stage and you've got the earn more part figured out and you understand what your life costs. It's really important to understand what your life costs, not because I want you to track it every single month. If you use software like YNAB that's doing it for you, great. I feel very happy with that sort of compromise. I like to make these observations and see when something goes off the rails, but I don't really look at it from a critical standpoint anymore as much as just to kind of give me a peace of mind and say, this is the gap, and I want to put this gap that I'm projecting that won't put me in a deprived state. I want to put it to work as quickly as possible. Does that resonate with you? How does that sound?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that makes it way easier. And I feel like before I just kind of grabbed a random number to put into my recurring, savings deposit because I had no idea how much it is. So to see that gap is really cool to know that I actually could be putting in more.
Yeah. I mean, it's big. So now with that, so I'm going to move all my document. I'm sorry, you'll be able to see my notes later. Hopefully this will make sense. I'll show it all to you. But now that we've done that, let's take a look at like where you are. So we're on this plan for financial independence. So we've covered your income, we've covered your expenses, we've covered the gap. Now we need to take a look at the lay of land from a net worth perspective. So what you've been maxing out your 401k at least the last year or so. What is your current net worth in your investment account specifically? That's what I'm kind of interested in. What is your invested net worth?
In my 401k or in my taxable account?
Great. Let's split them up. So your 401k first.
So I haven't checked it recently, but
I'm not super worried about the volatility. Okay. It's just, what do you think it might be right now?
Yeah, somewhere around 150-ish.
All right. So we have 150K in our 401k. So you've already passed that first 100K mark. The first 100K is truly the longest, hardest slog to get there. Once you're at that point, you can kind of start to watch compounding really working for you, which is kind of cool. What about in your taxable accounts?
So my taxable accounts, I have about another 100K.
Awesome. All right. So right now we're at 250K. So what is your current age?
32.
32. Nice job. Wow. Amazing. Okay. So let's now just run a very simple FI calculation. So I showed you my screen for this. At ChooseFI, we actually built just a very simple FI calculator that does the calculation that I like to do for this sort of thing. And we just want to basically present a simple projected out future value calculation. So it's nothing fancy here. When you go to apps.choosefi.com and you click on the calculators option, there's two of them. And I'm trying to remember, it's either the retirement projection or the future value of investment. We're going to go with the retirement one for right now. I'm pretty sure this is it. So on the screen, does this look okay? Can you see it?
Yes.
Cool. We're going to put your current age, and then we are going to set out, let's see, we could put a retirement age. Now, you don't really have any plans to retire early, but it would be interesting. Let's actually take a step back. It would be interesting to know how much you need. If assuming that your life were to stay the same, what would your number need to be for you to never have to worry about earning another dollar and know that you're good to go? So this is also a very simple calculation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take your actual monthly cost of living, which was $3,375, and we're going to multiply it times 12. So your life costs $40,000 a year, 40 a year. And we're going to take that number, 40,500, and we're going to multiply that times 25. Your FI number to be at a point where you could maintain your current cost of living in inflation adjusted dollars, if you had just over $1 million in your investment account, $1,012,500, you don't ever need to earn another dollar again. Now, I'm not telling you that you have to do that, but just from a peace of mind security, you could have the exact same life that you have right now without ever worrying about income again once you see your invested net worth reach just about that $1 million threshold, which is pretty awesome. And you're already 25% of the way there, which, as we just said, the first 100,000 is really the hardest. Like the thing actually starts working faster on your behalf. Just a cool thing about compounding, right? At some point, your money is actually working harder than you are. And so you're probably actually farther than 25% objectively. And we can kind of prove that out a little bit here. So let's take your starting balance. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back to the future value one. I'm going to go to future value of investment one because we don't really care about your retirement age at this point. We want to know if you are starting out with $250,000 invested and we make an average 8% return. That's the one that you hear Brad and I use. It's optimistic, but it's not unrealistic. It's very reasonable to use an 8%. And we don't need to get in the weeds on whether or not it's inflation adjusted or not at this point. We're doing very rough back of the envelope calculations, and we can reassess over time what we need to do, especially with the short timeline that you're going to need to pull this off. And we're saying we're starting today. So we have $250,000 today. We're making an 8% return. We just basically want to run this. How long do we need to get to that number, $1,012,000, assuming are we going to make any additional contributions, right? So we already talked about you're going to be making a contribution of $31.25, and you're going to be making this contribution monthly. So how long do I need to get to $1 million? And we'll keep playing with this. I suspect you'll be there in less than 10 years. But, actually, it's better than that. I'm doing you a disservice. So $31.25 was just what you're doing on the taxable side. You are actually also on top of that doing the $19,500 a year on the other side. So let's go ahead and add that in as well. So we do this right. So $19.5 divided by 12. So we're going to add another $16.25 to that $31.25. So you're actually right now, if you use this strategy, your total invested amount each month will be $4,750. That's what you're investing each month right now. That's your additional contribution. So this is what we're going to put here. Now, a person could be critiquing this saying, well, yeah, but some of that's pre-tax, some of it's not.
Yeah.
This is rough. It doesn't matter at this point. We can talk about those strategies. You're actually going to have a lot of options because you're going to have so much in your taxable accounts. If you really wanted to crush the tax code, not only are you already in Florida, but you would be the prime example for someone that could pull off a Roth conversion ladder. Like, it could totally happen. So we don't need to really worry about that. We have whole episodes on Roth conversion ladders, but I wouldn't even worry about it. When I'm doing my financial independence mapping, we're not actually talking about drawdown strategy. We're just talking about projections and simple math to get to this point. This is all I would incorporate at this stage. So again, for our audience, we have $250,000 starting principal. We're starting today with that net worth. We're expecting over a period of time to make a roughly 8% return. This is the goal here in terms of the investment strategy. This isn't dependent on what Tesla does or what Apple does. We're just trying to keep up with the market as a whole. This is using low-cost, broad-based index funds. And over any 30, 40-year period, they've done somewhere between 8 to 10%. Again, that's looking at past performance, but it seems realistic for us to use that going into this calculation. And then we're seeing how long does it take to get to roughly $1 million. We're starting this calculation at 10 years. Let's see what our net worth based on this analysis will be in 10 years. In 10 years, you'll be well past that number. You'll actually be at $1.4 million. So we're saying, crap. I'm within 10 years of striking distance. What about 8 years? That's a great question. Let's look at that. Yep, you'll be there in 8 years. Let's look at 7 years. You will almost be there in 7 years. So you're 7 years away from never needing to earn another dollar again. And then again, the number I came up with in 7 years was $969,393. You're like, well, that's a little bit short. Look, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but we know in 7 years, based on you just living your life and doing your thing and not worrying about this, you're going to be so freaking close to financial independence. It's not going to matter, right? And on top of that, you're going to be a partner. Your earning potential is that's assuming you never made another raise. You're already on track for partner. What are the odds that 7 years from now, you're just making exactly what you're making today when you're already crushing it? 7 years is probably underselling this. You'll probably be there in 5 to 6. And that is the power of kind of understanding how much your life costs. This is not about deprivation, but it's like, all right, look at the options I have as a result of knowing what my life cost and focusing on both sides of the equation. Like you could focus on the frugality, and I want you to a point. I want you to start there every single time. If something's blatantly wrong, you are spending 50, 60% of your income on your housing. You are spending $400 a month on your cell phone and cable package. You are spending $800 a month on your car. Let's get some easy wins. You're struggling just to survive. But once you're already at thriving, let's just figure out how to optimize and build a life that we can get excited about, not just 7 years from now, but do your life and do everything you do. Make your choices based on the confidence that you've already got this. It's just a mathematical certainty. So, Corinne, what do you think? I know I just ranted there, but it's because I'm very excited about your financial situation. What's your feedback on that?
That's so cool. Yeah, I definitely, I haven't run that before. And I think to your point, I kind of thought that if I wanted to get there in less than 10 years, I was going to have to be eating rice and beans and living in a shack. But it's very cool to see that just living your normal life and being reasonable and monitoring it, you can still make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
That's cool. All right. I don't know. What do you think? If someone's hearing this, what's your big takeaway for our audience after kind of going through this thought experiment?
I mean, for me, that's just so energizing. I feel like I was nervous to run all the numbers because I didn't want to see how long it was going to take, but it's actually so much more motivating to see okay, here's how much my life costs, and not being judgmental about it, just being all right, here's how much everything costs. Then I can look to see if there's some areas I can cut back on if I want to, but even if I don't, just be smart and take that extra money and put it somewhere. And that's my next step is instead of letting it sit in a savings account, is making sure that I'm actually putting that amount where it can grow and do the work for me. So I think that's probably my next step that I need to focus on.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing kind of your insight and your personal numbers with us. I mean, it's so much more fun when you can see actual numbers and just prove this is just simple math. We just did this on a couple free calculators. There was nothing fancy here. There's nothing to be incorporated. When you get a little bit closer and we're actually looking at tax strategies and drawdown and all these sorts of things, it's going to get more complicated. We're going to have to figure out, let's say you did make a decision at some point to walk away from your amazing corporate job and you did it before Medicare kicked in. And now you're thinking, all right, well, as an individual, what is going to be the cost of healthcare? There are certainly other considerations. This is not the end of the but certainly I wouldn't let all those considerations slow me down just from living my life. I would just get started. There's no scenario where 5 or 6 years from now, you have $1 million based on this math, and you're like, gosh, I wish I hadn't learned about financial independence. That really set me back. Gosh, no, just do it. So, all right, Corinne, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, to everyone listening to this, I hope that this is something that you can replicate for yourself. This is one of the most valuable thought processes that you can go to, and it's pretty replicable, right? We just need to identify the equation, and we need to take that basic equation for life, what you earn minus what you spend, identify the gap. What are you going to do with that gap? How are you going to invest it? Once you have those solved, you've basically got your FI plan in place, right? Use all the principles that we talk about here on ChooseFI, but you've got your FI plan right there. Go back, listen to this episode. You know, we put some time into the video. So if you're watching the video version, you can find it on the page. Again, just go to ChooseFI.com/304. And from there, you'll get all the links to the YouTube channel as well if you want to watch the video. But this is at the core of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Once you get these guardrails in place for where you're headed right now, it becomes very easy to make decisions to speed up the timeline and get better results. All right. If all of this was a foreign concept to you and you wanted to kind of ease your way into this idea of financial independence, let me encourage you to take our free 5-day challenge. To do that, just go to ChooseFI.com/start. You'll see all the information there on how to get started on your own path to financial independence. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled. If this episode was helpful to you, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends about us. We can be found on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. While you're there, don't forget to check out our other shows like Everyday Courage with Jillian Johnsrud and Rebel Entrepreneur with Alan Downigan. If you would like a free bite-sized course to jumpstart your financial independence, check out ChooseFI.com/challenge. ChooseFI is produced by Andrew Mendonza and Zachary Tan and is a production of ChooseFI Media Incorporated. ChooseFI.com is managed by Annie Sheely with William McVeigh, M.K. Williams, Melissa Lagerquist, Liz Kessler, Stephen Heptig, Kelly Black, and Jennifer Ma. And Ed T. is our CEO. Thanks for listening.